All right, let's begin. At the end of the last video, we kind of got cut off. A little bit of a mistake on my part. We were discussing the League of Nations, and I think I pretty much got it all done. But I just want to make sure we all understand that the League failed because it was too weak to resist the growth of totalitarian regimes. The League had no power. The League could not do anything to stop the spread of totalitarianism, of the dictatorships. In fact, just to give an example, in the early 30s, after Japan had attacked one of its neighboring countries, it was called to task. It was called out by the League of Nations, and the Japanese got up and walked out and quit the League right then. So the League was a good idea, but it just never really fulfilled that idea because it had no power. Therefore, it failed. All right, let's begin chapter 12, vocabulary, the World War II. This will be part 2. Let's move on to our next slide. We are looking at our first slide, and this video will probably be a little bit shorter than normal, probably get about 10-15 minutes on it, sort of make up for some of the missed time from the first video. But anyway, collective security. Powerful nations would band together to stop aggressors. And again, this is not a bad idea. You have nations like England, France, America, other nations banding together, working together to protect themselves from aggressor nations. At the end of World War II, you had the birth of NATO, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The idea behind NATO was to provide a counter to the Soviet Union. And so NATO was formed to counter Soviet aggression in Europe. And so, was it successful? Yes. I mean, the Soviet Union never attacked a country in Europe. And it was a military agreement. If one member nation is attacked, then the others go to its defense. Okay, let's continue. The Sudetenland, this was a part of Czechoslovakia, and many Germans lived there. At the end of World War I, the German Empire, the Ottoman Empire, had been broken up and new countries were formed. Part of Czechoslovakia is an area known as the Sudetenland, and many Germans had lived there for a long, long time. And this area, and we're talking shortly after Hitler becomes the chancellor, the leader of the German people, this area was demanded, it was demanded by Hitler that this be returned to German control. And so we're looking at is an area that used to be under German control, is now under the control of the Czechoslovakians. And Hitler demanded that this land be given back to Germany because, again, lots and lots of Germans lived there. And so the idea was, Hitler said, I just want the land that belongs to Germany returned to Germany. This had once been German land. It was taken from us at the end of World War I. We had nothing to do with that, and it's our land. We want it back. The Munich Conference. 1938, British and French leaders, without consulting the Czechs, I think this is a key point right there, they did not consult the Czechoslovakians. They, British and the French leaders, the Brits and the French, agreed to give Hitler part of Czechoslovakia to avoid war. And so what we're looking at in the Munich Conference, Czechoslovakia was carved up, parts of Czechoslovakia, Sudetenland, was given back to Germany because Hitler insisted. And essentially he says, if you don't give me what I want, there will be war. Now, is this a good idea? No, it's not. This is known as appeasement, which is giving in to the demands of a potential enemy. It is, well, there are bullies, okay? I mean, we have all kinds of anti-bully policies here in the school district. I mean, on and on and on. It's difficult to say what you think without offending someone these days. But again, there's a difference between offending someone because you happen to believe differently than they are and bullying them. Okay, with that being said, and that's not really on topic, let's get back to topic. To appease someone is essentially to give in to a bully. I was told as a child, I told my own children, if a bully is picking on you, the best way to deal with it, hold on.
Teacher, Mr. Antonio Mercado.
Lucky you, I'm back. So anyway, I was told by my father, and I told my children, if a bully's picking on you, the best thing to do is just punch him in the nose. Bullies are essentially cowards and have been forever. But by giving in to their demands, by giving the bully what they want, it just emboldens them. It makes them think that they can get away with it again and again and again. If they get away with it once, they're going to try it again and again and again. And so if you give in to the bully once, you'll be given into that bully again and again and again. And so in this case, the bully is Hitler. What does he want? Well, he wants the Sudetenland. Where does he get it? He gets it at the Munich conference. Why? Because the leaders of France and Germany, leaders of France and England, appeased him and said, you know what, oh my God, no, leave us alone, we're scared. And so he said, give me what I want or else. And they said, okay, here it is. You give in to a bully, he's going to want more and more. Our last topic on this page, Blitzkrieg. This consisted of a series of rapid coordinated movements by airplanes, tanks, and troop carriers, along with infantry. Blitzkrieg essentially is a German word that translates into lightning warfare. The Blitzkrieg was the new form of war. And I think the key word here is rapid. After World War I ended, France built what is known as the Maginot Line, a series of steel, concrete, reinforced bunkers and trenches along the French-German border. The French believed that the next war, they believed there would be another war, the French believed that the next war would be fought like the last war. So they planned World War II as if they were going to fight a newer version of World War I. Germany, once Hitler became the leader of the German people and the German military, he did not plan to fight the next war with the last war's weapons. He planned to fight the next war with the next generation of weapons. And so these weapons were, again, airplanes, tanks, troop carriers, and the infantry themselves. They were faster, better coordinated. They were faster, bigger, stronger, more powerful. And so he and his military took a leap forward in technology while France and the rest of Europe stayed where they were. So Blitzkrieg means lightning warfare. All right, let's move on to our next slide. And neutrality acts. Okay. America has been neutral really since day one. George Washington warned us in his farewell address that we should stay out of European affairs, European wars. And in 35 through 37, there were a series of laws passed that prohibited Americans from traveling on the ships of nations at war and from selling arms to those countries at war. So again, the United States, there was a series of laws prohibited, would not allow Americans to travel on the ships of nations that were at war. So you should not travel, thanks to the Neutrality Acts, you should not travel on a British ship. Why? Because that ship is at war. And the Neutrality Acts also forbid us to sell arms, weapons, to nations that were at war. The idea is to keep us out of war. Now again, this is 1937, the last one. The war does not really begin in Europe until 1939, September 1st of 1931, when the Germans attacked Poland. But this is looking ahead. Again, this is rare for our Congress to do this, so I'll give them a little credit. They figured war would erupt at any time, and they were trying to get ahead of the game by saying, you know what, when war does break out, we need to remain neutral. We need to stay off of the ships of those nations that are at war, and we need not to sell them any weapons. It takes us to our next one, cash and carry. Kind of a way to get around the Neutrality Acts. Americans could sell non-military goods to Britain and other nations opposed to aggression, but only for cash. So again, cash and carry. We could sell non-military goods to Britain and other nations who were opposed to aggression, who were opposed to war, but we could only do it for cash. So if we wanted to sell clothing or food or medicine to England, and all they had to do is say, we're opposed to aggression, we're opposed to war. Okay, here's the good, give me money. Is it an effective way to deal with this? Well, again, maybe. I mean, from a point of view, yes, it is. If you wanted, or if you thought that America should get involved in European conflicts, then this was a way to sort of get around things like the neutrality acts. Okay. Quarantine speech, 1937. After Japan invaded China, I think I made mention earlier how the Japanese had invaded one of their neighbors. China was it. FDR warned Americans of the growing unrest in the world and suggested that powerful nations had to act together to quarantine, to isolate aggressive nations. Now, this has a lot of merit. Let's take a few moments to look at it, and we'll kind of sort of cut this video a little bit short because, again, the first one was shorter. We'll make this one about 12 to 15 minutes. That, again, will give us about 25 minutes or so for the two of them, which is about right. So FDR warned Americans that because of the growing unrest in the world, he suggested that powerful nations act together to quarantine, to isolate those aggressor nations. Well, if we go back to one of our terms before, let's just go back real quickly. Here we are, collective security, nations banding together to stop aggressors. Okay, so again, in Roosevelt's quarantine speech, he essentially is asking for us to band together collective security against other nations and quarantine those aggressive nations. Now, of course, at this time in 1937, the aggressor nations would be the Japanese and the Germans. The Italians to a lesser extent, but really the Japanese and the Germans were the aggressor nations. Our last one, flying tigers. Love this concept. There were a number of movies made about the flying tigers. A couple starring John Wayne, different movies about a different concept. Essentially what this was, you had volunteer American pilots who flew to China and fought against the Japanese airplanes. So we had Americans prior to our involvement in the war. Keep in mind, the Japanese had invaded China in the early 30s. By 1935, there was really an active war between the Japanese and the Chinese. And so the Flying Tigers were American pilots, okay, who volunteered to fight on the side of China against the Japanese. And like I said, there's a lot of movies depicting this. One of my favorites is named The Flying Tigers, starring John Wayne, and it kind of goes into how these men, they were mercenaries to a certain extent. Now, yeah, were they fighting for a good cause? Yes, they thought they were. That's why they were doing it. But were they being paid for it? Yes, they were. In addition to a salary, in many cases, they got a bonus for every Japanese aircraft they shot down. So they were not fighting as Americans. They were Americans, but they were fighting for the Chinese against the Japanese. And this is really our earliest involvement in the war. Okay. Then let us recap real quickly. We are looking at the chapter 12. You know what, let me make that just a little bigger. There we go. Oh, that's better. Chapter 12, and this has been part 2 of our vocabulary. About 14 minutes and 30 seconds. Yay, bye.